AITA for not cleaning the kitchen after I did a lot of Xmas baking. I love baking. It's one of my favorite hobbies. So, of course, I love baking Xmas goodies. Every year I get requests from family members to make specific things they like for our family get-togethers. I don't always make everything people ask for, but sometimes I get carried away and go a bit overboard. This year, my husband and I were hosting my family for Xmas Day, so I wanted to do a lot of baking on the days leading up to the gathering. I had Friday off of work, so I got a fair amount done. But not as much as I wanted to because our 3 kids were home from school and I kept getting distracted. So, on Saturday, I told my husband to take the kids out of the house for a few hours so that I could focus on baking. He really didn't want to do that because it was Xmas Eve and it was cold. We did have a dangerous wind chill warning. I told him that there was no way I could get all the baking done that I wanted to if he and the kids were in the house, so I needed him to take them out to do something. Anything. I don't care what. He reluctantly agreed and I was able to get everything done that I wanted to. After I was done, I was exhausted and laid on the couch for a few minutes to rest before cleaning up the disaster in the kitchen. I must have fallen asleep because I got woken up by my husband loudly doing the dishes. I went to the kitchen and told him that I had planned on cleaning up, but I must have fallen asleep. I offered to take over for him, but he said he was almost done, so there's no point. I could tell he wasn't happy since he was basically rage cleaning mixing bowls. He asked if I got all my baking done and I told him that I did, and I was really happy with how everything turned out. He simply replied, "Good," without even taking his eyes off what he was doing. I asked him how the outing was with the kids and he just said, "Fine." I knew something was up, so I asked him what was wrong. He said I kicked him out of the house so that I could do my hobby on one of the coldest days of the year, and then he comes home to a huge mess in the kitchen and me napping on the couch. I told him I didn't plan on falling asleep and had every intention of cleaning up after myself. But he didn't seem to care. He told me that he needs to start dinner because the kids are hungry, so he's going to do that as soon as he finishes cleaning up your huge mess. I told him I was sorry for falling asleep without cleaning and offered to cook dinner so he can relax. But he told me that he just wants to be left alone for an hour while he cooks. This isn't the first time that he's cleaned up after one of my baking marathons. When he cooks, he does dishes as he goes. But I can't multitask like that, so I leave the dishes until I'm done. But sometimes I get distracted with kids or something else and unintentionally leave a mess in the kitchen. But usually I can get him to at least let me take over for him if he starts cleaning up after me. He really didn't want to do that because it was Xmas Eve and it was cold. We did have a dangerous wind chill warning. Quote, "This isn't about the dishes. This is about forcing your husband out of the house with zero warning on Christmas Eve, and on a day with dangerous weather conditions about. This isn't like a summer's day where he can just take him to the park. What is supposed to do with them? Take them shopping? YTA for kicking your husband and kids out of the house on Christmas Eve. YTA. Honestly, you sent him out in the cold with 3 small children and left a mess for him to clean. It doesn't matter what your intentions were. Your actions were assholey. Christmas Eve is hectic enough. Why make it worse? YTA. Not really sure how you couldn't possibly bake with him and the kids in the house. It was cold and Christmas Eve. It's an move to basically force him out of the house when he doesn't want to. I get why he's angry. This isn't the first time he's had to clean up after you. Sorry. But cleaning and baking at the same time isn't hard. Prep. Throw it in the oven. And clean what you just used. It's not exactly rocket science. YTA. How old are the kids? Why don't you make it a family baking marathon? I can't believe he actually took them out. I would have laughed. YTA. As someone who loves to cook and is also a gong show of a mess when I cook, I had to work very hard for a very long time to practice the skill of cleaning up after myself as I go. This attitude of, I just can't do it, is unacceptable when it has resulted in your husband having to clean up the mess without agreeing to or being asked multiple times. I'm not perfect. The kitchen isn't sparkling when I'm done, but I manage to keep all the garbage in one bowl, put the dishes away in the sink, dishwasher as I go, etc. That way if I get burned out and need to rest right after, my husband isn't burdened with the entire bulk of the cleaning. He will just come in behind and pick up the last one or two things I might miss and give an extra wipe down to the areas behind the counter I sometimes miss. The point is the effort needs to be there. You're not even trying. Repeat after me. Impact matters more than intent. YTA. YTA. And up. I'm not sure how to say this in a way that doesn't sound hostile, but it's not actually intended to be. I'm trying to save your marriage. Here. Your post makes you sound enormously egoistical. Like, hugely. Borderline unbelievably so. You're kicking your family out of the house in terrible weather just so you can enjoy your favorite hobby? Sure, you've overpromised what you're going to bake. But you like that, don't you? You like doing something that makes other people be grateful towards you, appreciate you, give you attention, so much so that you completely ignore what it's doing to your marriage. In your husband's shoes, I'd feel disrespected and hurt, because you're basically showing him that your hubby matters less to you than your hobby does. You need to change, and quick. YTA. You sent your family away on Christmas Eve? Out into the freezing cold. Dangerous cold. With no plan. Was he supposed to take them to the mall and that craziness? Just drive around? What was he supposed to do last minute? Why couldn't your kids help you bake? Why couldn't you have spread it out through the season? Our family did a little bit of baking every weekend and then froze the cookies. Why did they have to leave the house? Couldn't you have just asked him to keep them out of the kitchen? Isn't that part of the Christmas fun? Baking as a family? Spending Christmas Eve as a family? You threw out your immediate family to bake these goodies to impress your extended family. He said I kicked him out of the house so that I could do my hobby on one of the coldest days of the year, and then he comes home to a huge mess in the kitchen and me napping on the couch. YTA. These two sentences really say it all. YTA. How hard is it to tell your kids to not bother you? YOSNT. Your husband distracting them or keeping them out of the kitchen. He's pissed. BC. You kicked him out of his home on the coldest damn day of the year. If you're near Wisconsin, Illinois or Minnesota, it got down to 50 below in some areas. I would be pissed too. YTA. Who sends their husband and 3 school-aged children out when there are excessive wind chill warnings to bake, and then doesn't clean up? I would be livid to come home to a mess and you napping. YTA. Mainly for forcing your husband to leave the house with your kids when it was super cold out. Why couldn't he just mind the kids at home while you bake? I am sure coming home to a disaster in the kitchen and you napping was the icing on the cake. You laid down on the couch and act shocked that you fell asleep. You weren't just taking a break. You could have done that sitting up. Edit to add. You have left the mess before. Your husband isn't your servant. If you want to leave the dishes until the end, fine, but get it done. YTA. Either plan your baking time better or make fewer items. Most baked goods freeze well, so you can bake ahead of time, with few exceptions. Cookie dough can be mixed several days in advance and chilled until you're ready to bake. Except that you need to clean as you go. You can wash some dishes while you have things in the oven. Sending young children out into unseasonably cold weather was a really awful thing to do. My mom used to do epic levels of baking for Christmas with 3 kids in the house. You know how she did it? When we'd come into the kitchen to bother her, she'd tell us to get the hell out of the kitchen. If that didn't work, my dad would have to tell us, and we didn't want that. YTA. YTA, why are you putting baking for people before your husband and kids? Especially on Christmas Eve. YTA. This whole post screams I and me. Queen Mama wants to do her hobby, so the house must be empty. Don't care that it's dangerously cold outside. Also, Mama does the fun part and Papa is there to clean up the mess. Multiple times already. YTA. Why couldn't he entertain the kids in the house? As long as he kept everyone out of the kitchen, I don't see what the problem would be. To be honest, I'd be aggravated as he was if that happened to me. My response comes from personal experience. Holidays were always held in my home. Most of the cooking and all of the baking was on me. Christmas baking meant dozens and dozens of cookies of at least 6 varieties. So hundreds and hundreds of cookies. Plus pies, brownies and whatever else got thrown in. All of it done with my 4 kids and my sister's 4 kids, helping. And I cleaned up after myself. And them. And you know what? I never felt the need to toss my husband and the kids out into the cold so I could enjoy my hobby in peace. Instead, we made some very messy and chaotic memories that we all cherish to this day. YTA op. YTA. This baking wasn't about your family. It was about you. Christmas Eve is supposed to be about family. On top of that, you placed the burden of cleaning on your husband. I've had 100 baking marathon days as well, and always simultaneously cleaning up while baking. It's not that hard not to leave a mess. Finally, you were not there for your family and too exhausted to enjoy them on Christmas Eve. You let them down.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicuricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.